Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Phil here. Phil, you're somebody who's behind a really interesting piece of technology that, basically is this cloud network that makes it easier for developers, businesses to get into this world of decentralization, of what people have talked about Web3 is, but actually makes it more practical for these people to jump in and use a lot of the benefits of decentralization. There's all different types of benefits, from control of your data to being able to develop programs in a different way that gives users more power. And you guys have enabled people to do this in a more simpler manner. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, well, it's cool to be here. Always down to talk about our journey and, of course, the tech we're building and all the cool things that can be used for.
Awesome. So just kind of going back to the beginning, like what made you interested in entrepreneurship and technology, and specifically like the area you're in with decentralization? I mean, there's certain people there that are like super passionate about what that all is and everything. What made you want to build and be an entrepreneur in this category?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't set out to like disrupt cloud computing or the internet or anything like that. Um, I really set out to protect data for really, really long periods of time. My background was in enterprise IT, as a systems architect, building a lot of systems both on-prem and in the cloud and various SaaS, PaaS, IaaS. It was in 2018 or so, that's when I kind of first discovered ARweave, this decentralized network that offered this really simple premise of pay once, store forever. And that just caught my attention and like kind of marinated with me for years. And then it was really in 2020, I decided to quit my job and, become an entrepreneur, which was not something I ever thought I was going to do with my life. I enjoyed my career working in IT. I was doing a lot of challenging things, working really hard, but it was maybe not on that innovative front that had gotten me so excited about computers and the internet in general, going way back. I really just wanted to do something that people could understand. That was very much part of my job, was taking complicated, you know, technology matters and explaining them to people in, the business.
Mhm.
I started with this application called ARDrive, which is this Web3 like Dropbox app, just made it really easy to use the permanent storage of ARweave. So you could just drag and drop some files and keep them there forever, basically. So that was my original, intention. I just wanted to make an easy to use app and get it into the hands of everyone. And then I realized that, um, there were some opportunities on the ARweave side to create infrastructure to make that developer experience better, to make the data easy to discover, and to cache it in a way so it's really fast for apps and users to download. And we kind of realized that, the cloud infrastructure stack in general is just very centralized. So that's where this idea of ARIO and a permanent cloud network, um, you know, came into being, right? What if we could really build this internet and this infrastructure that runs it that actually remembers for a really long period of time? So it kind of grew from simple retail app to really big story and mission to make an internet that is more permanent, that isn't just about storage, but about access and identity and resilience. And that's how ARIO was born. So I really kind of went from simple, easy to explain application to now back into something that is a little bit more technical, but I think in the end, vastly more important, and opens up many use cases beyond, just one Dropbox app code. And it's crazy to now be here today talking to you and your audience about it.
Phil, so how does first of all, how did you kind of get this all built? Like, what was I mean, it seems like you had an understanding of technology. How did you go about building this whole thing? It doesn't sound like the easiest thing to build necessarily. And what was version one looking like compared to where it is now?
Yeah, so especially looking back, there was no AI, couldn't vibe code anything. So really, my first month at working on ARDrive was grinding away at TypeScript and learning these blockchain primitives and things like blocks and transaction IDs and all these things that a user or a developer shouldn't necessarily have to care about. And writing an application kind of gave us the insight into uh, into the infrastructure and like what's really needed to make servers or decentralized nodes work at scale. And as we were going through our journey with ARDrive, we had the opportunity to partner really closely with Forward Research, which is the team that developed the ARweave protocols. And there was this piece of infrastructure called a gateway. And we're developing our drive and we're uploading data to ARweave and realizing whenever we're accessing a file, it's going through arweave.net / like this ugly transaction ID. And you're like, oh, okay, that's this gateway. That's how you're accessing all the data. It was a single point of failure, right? So that's where like, okay, well, maybe there should be multiple of these. It should be permissionless. It should be a network. There should be an incentive layer to ensure that no single party is responsible for having to keep this access up. Because again, we're trying to build our drive. We're telling our users, you'll be able to get to your data in the future. And, again, we saw that the cloud infrastructure to support that was lacking. So we kind of took this gateway idea and code base. And now this was over the course of 3 years. I think this is in early 2022. Maybe end of 2021 is when all the ideas for the infrastructure side came to happen. Early 2022 is when we completed our last fundraise and really started taking this gateway node and turning it into a whole network, and introducing all kinds of new features on top of the basic things that it did, like a domain name system, and being able to pay in different currencies, whether crypto or just a credit card. Because again, the point is to make it as easy as using the regular cloud, right? It's just everything is cryptographically timestamped, tamper-proof, distributed around the world, et cetera. So it was a very long journey technology-wise. We did have some things we inherited. And again, when you inherit technology, it kind of puts you in a box to some degree, but also allows you to then maybe focus on other pieces. But yeah, it's certainly gotten to be quite a deep stack of services and SDKs and tools and really all the things that you might expect out of a cloud service like AWS or GCP.
So Phil, let's just take a step back, right? Like I understand the service piece and what you're doing. Like, why should anybody, the normal person, go the decentralized route versus the traditional route? What benefit does it give to them at this point to do that? Why is it important to be decentralized?
I mean, I think it depends on who you are. Decentralization, it's a very loaded term, right? But I think why is our decentralized network important? Why is this decentralized web important? And I think you look at the web in general, right? It's our most powerful tool for communication, for coordination, collaboration, culture, right? And if you look at it now, there's so much out there. It masks the fact that it's still fundamentally fragile over the long term, right? And it's permissioned as hell, right? So these things combined really make it so that we have this internet that just doesn't, it's just not built to remember things, right? Data disappears, platforms get shut down, content will get censored or memory hold. Link rot is a thing. And you end up now with these different silos of data and you have different identities across all of them, and they're all on platforms that you don't really control. You don't control. So, it's getting to the point, at least in my life, right? I've, been on many different platforms for decades, right? I've seen things come and go, whether it's my old blogs or things I've stored on various places, right? So it's not a hypothetical threat of like your data will disappear after a period of time, or there will be an accident and it will go away. We've seen cloud providers delete archives. We've seen payment providers cut off access. Centralized platforms rewrite the rules overnight. Look at the new song by Kanye. I know it's very controversial, but like platforms kicking him off, deleting his stuff left and right. So 23andMe, another case of a company storing a lot of data on users. The company goes bankrupt. That data now becomes some asset for some potential buyer. So I think as as a society, having access to unalterable, persistent documentation, and websites, apps, etc., I think could really, um, help us going into the future now, right? Because users, creators, communities, they'll actually have ownership over their data, their identities, in many cases, their applications, right? They can pass that information along, that digital legacy along, with this clear record of data provenance that goes right back to them, right? There's no question about who uploaded a given thing, when and when and what that thing was. Everything is cryptographically secure, right? And now in a world that's more increasingly shaped by AI, I just again talking about how I vibe coded a new little app, right? Like AI helped me do that. Having this permanent, becomes even more essential, I think, because AI systems rely on data. And if that data disappears or gets altered or lacks that provenance, then we're never going to know what our new intelligence is even built off. And that's kind of scary, right? That we can be building things on top of fiction. We already see that happening, of propaganda and fake news. But now we're building AIs on top of that is scary. So it's not, the decentralized web isn't just about keeping things online, but it's about anchoring the truth a little bit more in infrastructure and giving a future where AI systems end up with this base of knowledge that they can go off of that's verifiable, tamper-proof, permissionless. And that's what we're trying to make a reality, right? Because we think it is so important to have this, right? And we think it is important to build an internet that lets people deploy apps or upload things that outlast any given platform, politics, even us, right? One that really remembers. So I think it's, especially important, especially in today's day and age.
So why build on ARweave? What specifically attracted you to ARweave?
Well, specifically was the payment model. So yeah, there's lots of ways you can store data. There's other decentralized storage networks out there, and not saying those are bad or don't offer a lot of the benefits that I was just saying, like why we need a decentralized web. But ARweave in particular has a very different feature where there's no subscriptions. You just pay one time to upload your file, and that's it. It's like buying versus is leasing, right? It's a new type of storage that backs your data with this sustainable and perpetual endowment. So basically, you pay one time, and some of those fees go to the node operators and miners to accept that transaction, but majority of it goes into this protocolized endowment, right? That basically pays for your data for 200 plus years. And the reason why that's worked out so far, at least, over its, I think it'll be 7 years old this June, is because the declining cost in hard drive storage is going down year over year, and that's not stopping. That doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. So as long as those assumptions hold up, then this concept of a protocolized endowment can perpetually pay for storage. So that's what really hooked me, this pay once, store forever. And that primitive just enables a whole bunch of things on top of it. That's not to say it's complete. It's a protocol that incentivizes a collectively owned hard drive, right? If you look, I'm looking down at my computer here, but there's a lot of other parts in the computer than a hard drive, right? So that's where there's other infrastructure that's needed to really make this full stack of cloud services that you need to build web apps, right? That you need to build integrations and that you need to leverage the hard drive. So yeah, it's still a very unique thing out there. And the ARIO network, we mimic it in a sense, right? So any data you upload through ARIO is settled on ARweave. Domain names that you can buy on ARIO, you can lease a domain or permanently buy it. And it's the same kind of premise of paying into a protocol that incentivizes the node operators to serve and resolve that domain name. And the reason why that was important for us to add is, I mentioned before, like looking at a file on ARweave right now is going to like arweave.net or gateway /an ugly transaction ID. So what we've done is we made our own domain name system so you can add a friendly name to one of those transaction IDs and access it through any of the gateways on the network. So it adds, the ability to brand any piece of data or identity on ARweave and share it, right? Like imagine the internet today if we just had IP addresses. It would be vastly harder to communicate, coordinate, etc. So it's like I saw ARweave again at the start as being like, wow, this unique payment protocol, that's the big ticket thing, and enables all this stuff, this endless data lake that stuff just keeps coming in and can be composed and really offer these unique benefits. That I think that was the hook, right? And now, we are kind of building on top of it and pushing that control to the edges. And there's still maybe things that are similar to the traditional cloud, right? It's not incredibly different, right? It's still accessible through modern browsers over HTTP and TCP/IP, and it's fast, and you can use JavaScript and Python and any of the modern web languages, but it's permanent, right? So if you have temporary data storage needs, or if you need like that versatility, it's there's only one option: permanence. And I think again that's really important that the system is hyper focused on providing that core value.
Where do you think like the future of Web3 lies in just blockchain and decentralization? Because it became this like huge boom. It's obviously still around, still growing. Like we see the use cases when it comes to like remittance payments. I mean, that's one of the biggest today. But do you see this becoming a part of everyone's lives, or is how does this kind of start affecting people much more, just in general, this whole space?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it could become part of everyone's everyday life. That was the thing that brought me to ARweave. Was I wanted to use it to store my most important photos, the things that I wanted to be there for all times I could pass along, right? So, that kind of functionality where, again, you're just paying one time for it. I think that's something approachable by anyone. You could explain the ARDrive app, and there's other things, that are built that, are great apps on ARweave, but you could explain that to anyone, right? So in terms of everyday life, people are taking pictures, they're documenting important things that are personal that they want to keep forever. So I think that is something anyone can leverage, and you just pay with a credit card. So from the beginning, ARweave has always been a place to just store files or any unstructured data. It's public by default, but you can encrypt any data that goes on top of it, and that's what apps like ARDrive do. I think the privacy elements, storing things permanently encrypted, there's I think some other considerations that have to be had when doing that. You can't change encryption keys. So in terms of the some of the cybersecurity aspects of this and how that relates in the future are maybe unsure. Like I don't think the permanent web is necessarily the place for all private data. Another thing I think that'll be exciting in the future is leveraging ARIO network in particular for web apps, sites, personal pages like Linktree. We already have thousands of them already deployed. We think this is going to be especially more important in Web3 because once something is uploaded, it's timestamped, tamper-proof, it's hashed. You can verify that. We see, especially the last few months, DeFi websites getting hacked, protocols getting hacked. The developers will change where the website's pointing to some malicious code. If there was better verification of some of these things, those threats could be avoided. So having, again, a verifiable data storage can prevent some of those issues. NFTs has been something else. Like, I don't know if that's coming back. What we're actually seeing, that was one of the bigger use cases for ARweave at the start. And I think that's kind of died down in the market. But what we are seeing still is many NFT platforms are running out of funding or giving up or, I don't know, pivoting to something else. And their data becomes inaccessible because it's stored on S3. And there was just a case of Nike one of their NFT projects was all stored on Cloudflare, and Cloudflare changed the policy and changed the pricing, and all the data, all the access got cut off. So we're seeing, continual like migration of these really important assets that just need to be stored for really long periods of time. Continual migration of that. So maybe that'll continue as some of the older NFT projects, like, I don't know, hit this phase of not enough money to continue to upkeep. So maybe they'll really archive everything on ARweave. And then AI, obviously, that's kind of left that one for last. There's huge synergy with safe AI development and leveraging a permanent cloud network like ARIO. Now that's already been happening in a sense. Developers already making a few different kind of innovative apps leveraging permanent storage for synthetic training data, real training data, model outputs, even the LLMs themselves. You can store that on ARweave, and then your developers teams can pull that single copy that's immutable, verifiable, so on and so forth. There's this platform now called AO, which is a kind of native supercomputer built on top of ARweave that's offering all kinds of cool things for agentic behavior. People are exploring MCP servers and getting that connected with ARIO network, so you can have a chatbot and ask it questions about the data. Because again, it's this neutral data lake that everything ends up on. So other applications can leverage that data for different purposes. So we're not necessarily pivoting to be an AI company, but we think it's a foundational aspect for any of these teams trying to do it in a sustainable and long-term fashion.
So what is your long-term vision now? Like, what's your 5 to 10 year plan, Phil? Like, what do you kind of see happening next at this point?
I kind of, I guess, got into a little bit of this at the beginning,
A
like
little bit.
why I quit my job of, I wanted to get permanent storage into the hands of everyone, right? So that's kind of my personal mission, right? And it's really broad. Permanent storage can be applied to a lot of things, but our goal for ARIO is, I guess it's simple, but also complex. We just want to make it a feature of the internet, right? So everyone uses the internet. If permanence was a feature of it, then permanent storage is in the hands of everyone, right? Already, right? So I want to make sure that normal people, creators, businesses, anyone can publish without fear of deletion, right? We want it so developers can publish apps, especially now where it's so easy to just create an application. You can just pay one time to deploy it permanently and forever, pay one time to get a domain name for it, and there you go, your app is alive for very low total cost of ownership. Like, I want to continue to enable that for more complicated scenarios. I want communities to start banding around permanence and start leveraging these new domain names and identities that they own. And I know that's a broader goal for Web3 in general, just more adoption of digital identities. But I'm very much in that camp of we need to be bringing our own digital identity. And I know that has other responsibilities, right? If you lose your key or something, there's big responsibilities for that. But I think the consequences of having other companies own our identities are really bad. So, one of our biggest aspirations for ARIO is to not be constrained to just any single digital identity, right? We want it to be very interoperable because, again, everyone around the world, there's just so many different kinds of people out there, so many different Web3 platforms already that might have their own wallets or identity systems. So we just launched our mainnet a few months ago, right? And we've, kind of laid the foundation for this permanent internet. When it comes to the vision, the bigger picture, we did release a cloud map, what we call, which is that forward-looking view that builds on the foundation, tries to go into some of these areas and how, at least our current thinking, how we plan on executing on some of those. And again, it goes from just making it easy, continually making it easy for people to use, right? No matter what your background or technical knowledge, to use and benefit from ARIO, or giving builders the tools they need or the support resources they need to create that next generation of apps that can use all these unique features. We're trying to do that too, but like there's just so many use cases, obviously, that we can't cover. Obviously, the infrastructure itself continually has to be scaled and strengthened. That's always going to be something that I think has to do. I mean, there's, I think, over 1.5 billion pieces of data on the platform already, several hundred terabytes. I think the last 30 days, over 780,000 or so unique readers of the system. So it's already scaled pretty big, but continuing to make that a reality so it can really become a feature of the entire internet. So if we do all of it correctly, ARIO kind of becomes invisible, right? It's just kind of part of the background of the internet, like DNS or HTTP, but it's just fundamentally, I guess, a little bit, it's a little more radical, right? It's permanent. It's only one option when it's uploaded. You put up a YouTube video today, it's like, is it going to be there? I don't know. It's kind of like this half assumption that someone might copy it and the data always lives on the internet. This is like clear. It's permanent. And we really believe in that, and we believe that truth, memory, freedom, all these things deserve this permanence and this better infrastructure. So if we do it right, we're invisible, right? And we're not gonna rest until the world is bridged in, and whether that's the crypto person or the normie. Those are my future aspirations.
Well, Phil, I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. That was all the questions that I had. I think it's something really interesting that you're building, and there's clearly some use cases that are very valuable that are done on top of it already, which is great. It's also smart, I think, that you're targeting developers and businesses and making this more of like a B2B, type of offering here, because I think those are probably easier to convince, and then they've got their own consumer bases. But I'm just excited to see where we're going to go with this next, and appreciate you taking the time and doing this.
Yeah, definitely, Ben.